Welcome to the February 6th through 7th, 2023 board meeting. My name is Song Oh, President of the board. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing pharmacy law. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. This meeting is being conducted consistent with the provisions of Government Code Section 11133. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. As I facilitate this meeting, I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I have advised the meeting moderator to allow 3 minutes to each individual providing comments. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting. Before we get started, I would like to ask staff moderating the meeting to provide general instructions. Moderator?
Thank you. At the appropriate time when public comment is opened, we will display instructions as you see. People who are logged into WebEx can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right corner of the WebEx screen. Click that and in the text box type comment and hit send. Anyone may also raise their hand by clicking once on the hand icon. And if you're on a mobile device, that may be behind the 3-dot other options, or our audio dial-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each person will have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I'd like to take a roll call to establish a quorum. Maria Serpa? Hopefully not technical difficulties again with Maria. We'll move on to Jig Patel.
Licensee member present.
Hi, Jig. Good morning. Renee Barker.
Good morning. Licensee member present.
Thank you, Renee. Indira Cameron Banks. Don't think Indira is joining today. Trevor Chandler.
Public member present.
Good morning, Trevor. Jesse Crowley.
Licensee member present.
Thank you, Jesse. Jose de la Paz.
Public member present.
Thank you, Jose. KK Jha.
Licensee member present.
Thank you, KK. Kula Koenig. Don't believe Kula is joining. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yeah, Ricardo Sanchez, public member present.
Hi, good morning, Ricardo. Nicole Tebow. Don't believe Nicole's joining today. Jason Wise. Don't believe Jason is joining today. And I'm here. Maria, are you there? Maria? The quorum is established, so we will proceed with our next agenda item. Maria, if you could let us know when you're back. Oh, she is dropped off. I believe technical difficulties of the world of technology. Indira also is trying to join, but we'll announce when they are in attendance. So we will push forward. Agenda item 8, Communication and Public Education Committee report. Members, I will turn the meeting over to our chairperson, Ricardo Sanchez, to provide a report from the Communication and Public Education Committee. Ricardo, the floor is yours. Ricardo, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you, President O. On behalf of the committee, I am pleased to provide the board with a summary of the committee's efforts at its meeting yesterday. Thank you to my fellow members, Vice Chair Jason Weiss, Jose de la Paz, KK Jha, Kula Koenig, and Nicole Tebow. As included in the meeting materials, Senate Bill 872 allows a county, a city, and county, or 2 special hospital authorities to operate a mobile unit as an extension of the pharmacy license held. The law authorizes the mobile unit to dispense prescription medications, except controlled substance, under specific conditions. The measure also requires notification to the board 30 days before beginning or discontinuing use of a mobile unit. During our meeting yesterday, members discussed a draft a standardized form intended to facilitate the notification process for the use of the mobile unit. Further, we reviewed the draft FAQs developed to assist licensees with compliance with the new law. Drafts of these two items are included in attachment 2, which it should be in your attachments. During our discussion yesterday, the committee requested modification to the notification form to also include collection of the municipality under which the mobile unit is operating. The committee otherwise spoke in support of the notification form and draft of the FAQs. The committee is offering the following recommendation: approve the notification form with modification requested and approve the FAQs as presented. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the notification form or draft FAQs? Hearing none, thank you. Moderator, can you please open the lines for public comment?
Certainly, and we are opening up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has a comment, they can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen, type the word comment, and hit send. Anyone may also raise their hand to request comment, and by clicking on the hand icon, and any call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. President O, I turn the meeting over to you for the vote.
Thank you, Chair Sanchez. And I also note, I believe Indira has joined and Maria is attempting to join. So we'll see if we can hear Maria. Maria, how do you vote? If you're still struggling with technology on that end, technical difficulties, not technology. Jake Patel.
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Renee. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jason, sorry, Jason is not here, and I vote yes. The motion passes. Someone could just check in with Maria. Would really appreciate it. Thank
hear
you.
me?
Oh, there you are. Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
I vote yes, but I'm still having technology problems.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Appreciate it. All right, Chair Sanchez, back to you.
Thank you, President O, and thank you to everyone for their consideration of the FAQs. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the update on communication and public education activities by staff. And I'm going to have Ann go over that with all of you. If you can, Ann.
Sure. So during the meeting yesterday, we provided the committee with updates on staff activities related to several important issues under the purview of the committee. The committee was advised about the release of the January 2023 issue of the script, which was published and is available on the board's website. The newsletter includes articles about new laws for 2023, the end of COVID-19 state of emergency, the Sharps Waste program, as well as the revised USP chapters. Subscriber alerts were released, as well as to ensure that licensees were aware of the release of the newsletter. Members were advised about staff-provided research outreach, including the day-long training on the prescription drug abuse prevention that was provided in November via WebEx. Members were reminded about the various modules that are included in that training, including corresponding responsibility, pharmacy trends, drug diversion trends, as well as changes in pharmacy law, and a presentation by the Department of Justice on the Cures program. We also reviewed some of the messaging that was provided during the board's public education campaign that occurred in September of last year as part of Opioid, Heroin, Fentanyl, and Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Month. So in the meeting materials, there are copies of some of the messages that were released. We took an opportunity to theme the various weeks with both consumer-facing and licensee-facing messaging, and we partnered with both the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Medical Board, who shared the board's messages on their various platforms as well to ensure a broader reach of the board's messages. The committee was advised of some initiatives that are still under development by staff, including development and or dissemination of educational materials related to naloxone, and that could complement well some of the work that is being done by the licensing committee that you'll hear about later today. In addition, there are 2 items that the committee is working on that stem from work being done by the Medication Error Reduction and Workforce Committee, including a public education campaign regarding treating pharmacy staff with courtesy, as well as an education campaign regarding the important work and educational materials available by the Institute for Safe Medication Practices and the resources that they have available to assist the licensees with medication errors. Staff, we are hoping to partner with DCA and potentially some national organizations as we develop some of these campaigns. And we hope to provide an update during the July committee on progress on those 2, as well as an additional initiative underway to develop an alternative process by which licensees can complete the self-assessment form. So it's in the development stages, and we hope to provide an update during the July meeting for that as well. And also included in the meeting materials is a summary of the media outreach that our public information officer had between July and December of last year. And so that is in attachment 4 for your review as well. And I'll turn it back to you, Ricardo. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comments from committee members? Okay. Thank you. Are there any comments from board members on the activity of staff? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. And moderator, we are ready for public comment.
And we have opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, they can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into the text box there and click send, or raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. And if you are on a mobile device, that may be behind the 3-dot other options. And we have no call-in users right now, so I will not go through that. But are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn the meeting back to President O, I would like to publicly acknowledge Bob Davila, who served as the board's public information officer for 5 years prior to his recent retirement. Bob played a vital role in the success of this committee during his tenure with the board. I wish him all the best in his retirement. Bob, if you're watching this live stream, thank you for everything you've done. You've made all of our lives a lot easier. Always very well prepared and very informative. And man, we never had to ask for anything twice. Definitely go getter and greatly missed. And I think it'll be a big loss for the pharmacy board, but he wish him the best in his future endeavors. I would also like to thank my fellow committee members. Yesterday was my last meeting as the chair of the committee. I'm currently serving on my year of grace as a board member. I'm not eligible for reappointment. I want to share it as it's been an honor to work with everyone on the committee, and would like to thank President O and the Vice President Serpa for the opportunity to serve as the chairperson of this committee. It's been great. I've had a good time. It's been 8 years and ready to move on. And I wish you all the best in protecting the public and educating the licensees. And thank you. And also, I'd like to conclude with the next Communication and Public Education Committee meeting is set for July 19th, 2023. And with that, I'll send it right back to you, President O.
Thank you, Chair Sanchez. Thank you for all the work you've done. You've done an amazing job for the board, and your contributions were just amazing. And we'll have farewell to you in more subsequent meetings. So don't leave us yet.
No, I'm not. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to the next agenda item, and I see Maria's back, so that's good. And go to next agenda item 9, Medication Error Reduction and Workforce Committee. Unfortunately, as Chairperson Tebow is unable to attend, I will provide the update on behalf of the committee, and I'll be quick. You may recall that during the December board meeting, we considered a few of the items from the Medication Error Reduction and Workforce Committee. So today, I'll report on the remaining items, including one item for action. First, summary of presentation and discussion on Just Culture as the committee continues to educate on Just Culture. During our November meeting, we received a presentation on Just Culture. The meeting materials summarize the presentation, and the slides are included in attachment 1, so I'll keep my comments short. I do want to highlight that Just Culture is about shared accountability for individuals, organizations, and others. I would encourage anyone interested in learning more to review the live stream of the presentation. Members, do you have any comments? Seeing none, moderator, please open the line for public comment.
Certainly, and we're opening up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you've got a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box there and click send, or anyone may raise their hand to be recognized for comment. Are there any comments on this agenda item? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank
you. Moving on to next agenda item B, discussion and consideration of recommendation to initiate rulemaking to amend Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 1711 related to quality assurance programs. As included in the meeting material, Section 1711 establishes the requirements for a quality assurance program. As a committee, we have considered the board's current requirements and ultimately concluded that the current requirements are insufficient. As the meeting materials detail some background, I will not review the information, but the current requirements are fairly general. Over the course of the 2 meetings, we considered the policy questions detailed in the meeting materials, and through this discussion, determined changes to the board's regulation is appropriate. Attachment 2 includes a copy of the proposed language for the board's consideration. You will note that the proposed language is intended to ensure a more robust review of the error and identification of possible contributing factors as well as workload. As indicated in the meeting materials and on the slide, the committee is offering a recommendation with the committee's recommendation serving as a motion. Are there any questions or comments from members? Also, our reg attorney Grace is there. So, hi, Grace.
Good morning.
I'm seeing no questions from members, so we will go to public comments.
And we have opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If there are any comments, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in that text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand to ask to be recognized. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please, with a motion and With the committee motion and public comment, we'll take a roll call vote. Maria, how do you vote? Oh, Maria's thumbs up. Legal counsel, is that sufficient? Jake, how do you vote?
Yes.
Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
That is
Indira, how do you
sufficient.
vote? Is that sufficient, Grace? Okay.
Yes, that's
All right.
sufficient.
Oh,
Or if she
Yeah.
even wants to type it in the comment box, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Indira, didn't mean to interrupt you there. Indira, you said yes. Okay, Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And Maria voted yes, and I vote yes. The motion passes.
I'm having problems with my technology. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do the next report, but it looks like it's working now, except for my video. I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay, we can see you, Maria. All right, we'll move forward with the next agenda item, C, discussion and consideration of Pharmacist Wellbeing Index State Report and National Academy of Medicine National Plan for Health Workforce Wellbeing. During the meeting, we reviewed the findings of the October 2022 Wellbeing Index, which showed a slight increase in the distress percentage for California respondents. We also reviewed the National Academy of Medicine's National Plan of Health Workforce Wellbeing. The committee did not take action on these items and will continue to monitor the findings of the Wellbeing Index. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Moderator, please open the line for public comment.
Certainly, we're opening up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, tap that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. If you would like to make a comment, you will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. It is my understanding that as part of the committee's next meeting, a presentation will be provided by a patient safety organization. That concludes the report for the Medication Error and Workforce Report Committee. And so I am going to the next agenda item 10. It's Enforcement and Compounding Committee report. Maria, are you good to go?
It looks like things are working for the moment, so I think we can go ahead and start.
Okay, looks like it's working. So I will turn the meeting over to Chair Maria Serpa to provide a report on the Enforcement and Compounding Committee.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, President O. On behalf of the committee, I'm pleased to provide the board with a summary of the committee's efforts at its January 23rd meeting. Thank you to my fellow committee members, Vice Chair Jid Patel, Renee Barker, Indira Cameron Banks, Sung Oh, and Ricardo Sanchez. Our first item on the agenda is discussion and consideration and possible action on self-assessment forms. You notice the screen here has 4 forms. We're going to talk about the first 3 first. Members, the dynamic nature of pharmacy law generally results in the need to update self-assessment forms on an annual basis to incorporate law changes made at either the state or federal level. During the committee meeting, members reviewed the proposed changes to several self-assessment forms, which are included in the meeting materials. As the first 3 self-assessment forms will be updated via the self-assessment process, I don't plan to highlight the changes today. They're listed in the meeting materials for your information. I do note that during our committee meeting, members felt comfortable with the use of the streamlined Section 100 regulation process. Section 100 regulation change is appropriate when the proposed changes to the forms themselves do not create a new requirement, but rather include new, updated, or repealed legal requirements exactly as written in the law. The executive officer can move forward with updating these forms through the streamlined process, and I will, as the chair of the committee, review the proposed changes before future updates are made via the Section 100 process. During the meeting, the committee also considered proposed changes to the self-assessment form related to automated drug delivery systems. The meeting materials and the next slide highlight the changes. Thank you. I'd like to highlight that procedurally, we must address this self-assessment form in a different manner than the prior three, because the regulations section 1715.1 that incorporates by reference ADDS self-assessment and the form itself are currently going through the rulemaking process. The comment period concluded on December 27th. Comments received during the committee period or during the comment period will be considered as a separate agenda item after this committee report. The committee's review and discussion was limited to the new changes being recommended in response to changes in the law. As indicated on the form, deleted text is shown by italicized double strike through, and added language is shown as italicized wavy underline. This can be a little bit complicating, so that an easy example to see this change is on the first page of the form. The note and the text added as italicized and wavy underline is a new change for our consideration. The update to the revision date at the bottom of the form is an example of deleted text. Because the board will be considering the comments received during the comment period to ensure compliance with government code, it is important that we limit our comments now to the new changes. The committee is offering a recommendation. However, because of the need to consider earlier comments received in response to the public comment period, it's my understanding that we will not take action on the committee's recommendation until later in this meeting. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the self-assessment forms? And like I said, we'll talk about the ADDS more in another agenda item. So I think we're ready for public comment.
And this is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you've got a comment, you may look for the question mark icon, tap that, type comment in the text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. Are there any requests for comment at this time? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature for now?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next agenda item is discussion and consideration of barriers to time case resolutions. Members, one of the committee's strategic objectives is to determine and reduce barriers to timely case resolution to improve consumer protections. There are many steps involved in an investigation, and the gravity of the violations, if any, are in large part determine the outcome of the matter. As I highlighted during the committee's meeting, about 7% of the board's investigations result in referral to the Office of the Attorney General for discipline. I highlight this because there appears to be a perception that the formal discipline taken by the board constitutes a significant portion of the investigation. The data tells us otherwise. When we consider aggregated data for the investigations, investigation timeframes are currently the longest step. Included in the meeting materials and on the slide, there it is, are the recommendations that are being offered by staff to remove some of the barriers experienced by inspector staff. During the committee meeting, members spoke in support of the recommendations and requested that staff prepare proposed statutory language for consideration at a future meeting. Member, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, I think we're ready for public comment.
Thank you. And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand to ask to be recognized to comment. Each commenter will have 3 minutes. I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that up? Oh, I spoke too soon. We do have a request for comment from someone logged into WebEx as Susanna Sue. Susanna, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. You're unmuted.
I do have a question regarding how we can make professional directors and the administrators for clinics to have accountability for following the policies, procedures, and enforcing them at the clinic. Currently, it is unclear what the ramification will be if they do not follow those policies and procedures that are approved for the clinics to follow.
Thank you. I'm a little confused because I don't think that has to do with this agenda item. Did I miss something, Eileen or Ann?
Oh, I don't think it had anything to do with the matter that's up for public comment, but if the commenter wanted to try and direct it, it's not, we don't open up public comment for each item for anything. It's narrowed to the item that's been offered.
Okay.
And I do not see any other requests for public comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Please do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item is overview of.
Sorry, Maria, this is Jessie. I kind of, I didn't really have a question at the time that we talked about board comments, but I did have a question in terms of this proposal. Was there any discussion on a certain time frame that these things should be provided to investigators, or is that kind of left in the open?
That would probably be part of the discussion. Right now, we're just looking at getting statutory language so that we could have the authority to request it. And then we could either determine putting those timeframes either in the statutory language or via regulation. That way we can control that too. Okay. So that's a good point. It needs to be discussed.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from board members before we move on? Okay. Move on to item C, overview of federal requirements for compounding under provisions of 503A. During the committee meeting, Ms. Smiley provided an excellent overview of the requirements for authorized individuals to qualify for some of the exemptions to federal law under provisions of Section 503A. The overview serves as a great reminder to all licensees as we begin our discussion on several areas of drug handling, processing, and compounding triggered by the actions of USP. We must be mindful of the larger picture that includes federal law in addition to state laws and regulation. Members, do you have any high-level questions or comments on the overview information that was provided?
This is Renee Barker. I just wanted to say that it really was an excellent presentation, and just for anybody listening who did not attend, that those should still be in the minutes from the meeting materials, correct? That if they wanted to look at the slides.
I believe it's also in the webinar, so they can even hear the presentation.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. Very applicable to some of the compounding chapters that we'll be discussing.
Great, thank you. Good point. Any other member comments? Okay, I think we're ready for public comment.
Thank you. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, they may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon, or they may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item D is presentation on USP General Chapter 825 regarding radiopharmaceuticals. During our meeting, we also received a presentation from Supervising Inspector Christina Costa on the new USP 825 chapter related to radiopharmaceuticals. Chapter 825 Sorry. Chapter 825 provides standards for the preparation, compounding, dispensing, and repackaging of radiopharmaceuticals, including all sterile radioactive material that must maintain sterility through manipulations prior to administrations. Provisions of this chapter become effective on November 1st, 2023. I would encourage the members to review the live stream presentation to learn more about this requirement of the chapter. So like Eileen's presentation, Christine's presentation is also available on the live stream. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready for public comment.
And we have opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into the text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand to ask to be recognized by clicking on the hand icon. And if you're on a mobile device, that hand icon may be behind the 3-dot other options. Each speaker will have 3 minutes.
I think it seems like a quiet group.
I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Please do, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next agenda item E, discussion and consideration of proposed addition to Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 1738, related to radiopharmaceuticals. Members, following the overview from Ms. Smiley and the presentation by Dr. Acosta, the committee undertook a review of the proposed regulations that may be necessary to implement, clarify, or make more specific requirements related to the USP chapter. One of our goals is to have the regulations mirror the structure of the respective USP chapters. This means that the numbering format and the section for the proposed regulation will mirror the USP chapter. Just to be clear, we will not be reiterating USP language, but only clarifying or making more specific the requirements as stated in USP. If no clarification is needed, there are no additional language being proposed. As I stated during the committee meeting, consideration of the board's compounding regulations is a dynamic process, and individuals will have an opportunity to participate throughout the development and rulemaking process. Members, I don't intend to review each section in great detail during the meeting today. However, during the committee's meeting, members of the public were provided numerous opportunities to participate in public comment, including following the committee's discussion on each of the proposed sections. You will note that the proposed regulations for radiopharmaceuticals include new sections 1738 through 1738.14 and cover a range of areas related to radiopharmaceuticals. These proposed regulations will build upon the requirements included in federal law and those included on USP Chapter 825. Before I open up for member comments, I wanted to quickly advise members that from a process standpoint, after the committee completes its work on the development on all the compounding chapters, it intends to present the board with all of the proposed regulations together as a package for consideration and action. We anticipate that this could occur by the April board meeting. It's an aggressive schedule, but the committee is working hard to complete its work to ensure licensees have a clear understanding of the board's expectations related to compounding to coincide with the November 1st USP compendial effective date, if at all possible. Thank you for your patience. During this process, it's going to take us several meetings. Members, do you have any questions or comments? I think we're ready for public comment.
Maria, I had raised my digital hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see. Sorry, Trevor.
I was just curious, this is something that, this is an area that I'm unfamiliar with. Were there any concerns or common concerns raised through this process about the language that's been introduced, or has it been pretty uneventful as far as what's being considered?
That's a really good question because many of you weren't around as we started this process many years ago when USP was updating and then paused their process. So we have had many meetings with stakeholders about the different USP chapters. So of course, this is the easiest one because it's about radiopharmaceuticals. That is a very narrow focus. So during our meeting, we really got no comments. Our next meeting, I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, is on the other chapters. We expect to have a great deal of interactive comments with the public because that's what the normal pharmacy practice is about. Radiopharmaceuticals is not something that every pharmacist participates in.
And so the people that practice radiopharmacy, or they haven't been particularly vocal on this, or they've had their voices heard and they feel comfortable with what's in there?
In past meetings, we've had discussions, but at the most recent meeting, there was no discussion from members of that group.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member comment? And I'm sorry, I can't see everyone's picture, so speak up if I miss you. Okay, I think we're ready for public comment.
Thank you. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, they can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. And if you're on a mobile device, that icon may be behind the 3-dot other options. Are there any comments on the current agenda item? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Please do, thank you.
You're welcome.
And as I started to mention with Trevor's question, our next committee meeting is February 15th. We will be considering proposed changes to regulations to pharmaceutical compounding for non-sterile preparations. That should be a very lively discussion. We're welcome all interested parties to attend the meeting either in person or via WebEx. And the meeting materials are already posted on the website. So we posted those materials early because we expect to have quite a few comments. Next agenda item F, review and discussion of enforcement statistics. Attachment 5 includes enforcement statistics reflecting enforcement-related actions between July 1st and December 31st. As indicated in the meeting materials, the board received 1,839 complaints during this period and closed 1,459 investigations. The board secured 3 interim suspension orders, 2 automatic suspension orders, and has been granted 4 Penal Code 23 restriction. Also, as of January 1st, the board had 1,450 field investigations pending. The average days for various stages of the investigation process are included in the meeting materials. As I shared during the committee meeting, there was a large increase in the supervisor review time and second level review time. I believe in part this is due to a vacancy in the supervising inspector level, and as a committee, we'll be monitoring the progress. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the enforcement statistics? I think we're ready for public comment.
And this is the moderator. We are opening up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen, type the word comment and click send, or anyone may raise their hand to be recognized by clicking on the hand icon. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Thank you, yes.
You're welcome.
President O, this concludes my report, and I turn the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Chair Serpa. Thank you for always doing an amazing work on the committee. Looking forward to our discussions on all the compounding chapters. Next agenda item is agenda item 11, discussion and consideration and possible action related to proposed regulations to amend Title 16 CCR 1715.1 and automated drug delivery system self-assessment form. As included in the meeting materials, in January 2022, the board approved proposed regulation text to amend section 1715.1 related to automatic automated drug delivery system self-assessment and the form incorporated by reference. For our consideration today are comments received during the 45-day comment period that concluded December 27th, 2022. The meeting materials include the language, comments received, and staff recommendation based on the comments received. Our discussion also needs to include the recommendation from the Enforcement and Compounding Committee. I trust that members had an opportunity to review this information. I have reviewed all the information and I agree with the changes offered by staff and the recommended responses. I'm also in agreement with the changes offered by the Enforcement and Compounding Committee. As we open up for this discussion, members, I'd like to hear your thoughts. And also our Assistant Deputy Director, Grace, Arupo Rodriguez is here to assist with the regulation process if we have any questions. This process is always a little complicated because the changes are made while the regulation is pending. So with that, members, any comments? I believe we do need to have someone make a motion. I don't know if it is necessary to vote down a motion from the Enforcement and Compounding Committee. The process is a little bit confusing for myself as well. I see Trevor's hand is raised. Trevor?
Yes, I move the motion on the screen.
Thank you, Trevor. Any second for Trevor?
This is Maria, I second.
Thank you, Maria. And go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize for jumping in. I think we may need a little bit of help navigating this. It's kind of we're kind of in a weird place because the Enforcement and Compounding Committee is offering a recommendation as well based on changes in the law. So I don't know if Grace feels comfortable kind of jumping in a little bit to assist. Should we just table that committee's recommendation and look at it from the possible motion that's on there, potentially modify to include the recommendation from the committee? Is that a possible option? But I think we probably need to capture both types of changes if the committee or if the board believes that that approach is appropriate. I apologize for jumping in. Sorry about that.
No, thank you very much, Anne, for jumping in. It is a little bit of a convoluted process because we have we're at a kind of a different point in kind of the comment period being closed, but then also we have on the table recommendations from the committee with the new incorporating the new law. So as Anne mentioned, what you can do is simply table it, which means to wait, or what the board can actually do is if it's no longer appropriate for the current recommendation that the committee has offered, for the board to essentially reject what is proposed. And then, so that would be one vote, is simply reject the current recommendation of the committee and then take another motion to now consider the new language that we have before us. So step one would be either to accept or reject the current language that's being proposed, which it sounds like because of the changes, it's probably more of a recommendation to reject. And then you would take a new motion, considering the comments received, and then accepting the new language on the table.
Okay, thank you, Grace. I would heed that recommendation. However, there were also significant comments received, so I want to be mindful of that maybe. But we'll proceed. So we'll start then with a Enforcement and Compounding Committee recommendation, is my understanding. So we will vote on that. And are you recommending we vote that down? And then we will use this new motion as a motion to approve the comments received and staff incorporated comments. Is that my understanding correctly?
I think that's a recommended approach.
Okay.
The cleanest approach, yes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Grace. So are we all in? Are we following that along? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think that from a process standpoint, to actually the only way to effectuate and consider the changes through the comment period from a practical standpoint is to vote down this committee motion. Just because but I think it's important to be mindful that when you do vote this down, when you resume your conversation of the comments, that you remember and pull in the committee recommendations as part of that conversation, because I don't think that you want to lose the work that the committee did when you're making your larger policy decision. I don't know that I'm articulating that very well, but hopefully you're picking up what I'm laying down.
That would be great. The only part then is combining those two that I would probably need you and Maria's assistance. So if you could just please help us in kind of deciphering if there's anything you could point out, that merging of the two. So with that, I'm going to then go to the Enforcement and Compounding Committee's recommendation, and it's displayed. Thank you, Debbie, or moderator, whoever got to this part. And so I guess I don't know if I could say this, but I'm recommending that we vote this down so that we could have a clean motion to combine all of the above. So with that, that's the committee recommendation, and I will start with you, Maria.
President hi, this is Eileen Smiley.
Go ahead.
Before we vote on this, I think we may need to open it up for public comment, as we normally do.
Okay, so public comment for committee recommendation. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for catching that. All right, we'll open up for public comment.
Thank you. And we've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send or raise your hand. We do have one request for comment from someone logged into WebEx as John Gray. John, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning. This is John Gray. I'm a registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this topic. Obviously, recognizing there'll be ongoing discussion and comment on this self-assessment, I did want to share my comments now so they don't get lost. You've already read my letter outlining why I believe establishing a requirement for PICS to complete the ADDS self-assessment for hospital AUDS devices that are exempt from licensure is inconsistent with the underlying statute, specifically 4427.7a, and is therefore inconsistent with the legislature's intent when it passed the underlying bill. So I don't want to restate those things, but I do want to walk you through an example that illustrates why I believe it is unreasonable to establish the requirement that hospital AUDS devices that are exempt from licensure be subject to the AUDS self-assessment. So imagine a pharmacist in charge of a hospital pharmacy that does not operate any licensed AUDS devices and therefore does not hold an ADDS license. The PIC understands that based on 4427.2i, she does not need to license her hospital AUDS devices, but she must comply with all other requirements in Article 25. She diligently reviews Article 25 and arrives at Section 4427.7a, which states a pharmacy holding an ADDS license shall complete an ADDS self-assessment. The PICS pharmacy does not hold an ADDS license. Thus, she arrives at the logical conclusion that she is not required to complete an ADDS self-assessment in order to comply with this section of law. Contrast that with the mental gymnastics that she would need to go through to arrive at the conclusion that the ADDS self-assessment is required. She would need to think something like, I know that my pharmacy does not hold an ADDS license, but 4427.2i requires my unlicensed AUDS devices to comply with all requirements in Article 25. Since the self-assessment is required for pharmacies that hold an ADDS license, I should do the ADDS self-assessment for my AUDS devices because that is sometimes a requirement of some ADDS devices. In my view, the first manner of thinking is more logical and more consistent with the plain text of the statute. I continue to believe that the statute does not require a hospital pharmacy that operates only unlicensed AUDS devices to complete the ADDS self-assessment, and that promulgating a regulation with that requirement is inconsistent with the underlying statute. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
Yes, this is the moderator, and I do not see any other requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. Grace, did you have I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It is a legitimate concern for such non-lawyer people like me as well. So I would like to hear what your thoughts on that, because it really is hard for me to wrap my head around all these legalese and languages. That's, so please, if you have anything to say.
No, I appreciate the question and don't feel bad about putting me on the spot. I would, in order to properly address it, I would need to take it maybe offline, or we could take a 15-minute break to take a look at this further. I hear the concern that the Kaiser Permanente has, and want to appreciate kind of the logic that he has presented along with what has been before us. So, happy to table it and we can revisit it maybe later down in this meeting. But I wouldn't want to be giving some advice on the spot without further taking a look at it.
Okay, no, I mean, this has been a discussion, so I would imagine our chair, Alpha Serpa, who raised her hand, so has some insight into it as well. So just wanted to see, before I go to her, I wanted to see if you had any insights, but I will go to Maria and then we'll go for vote and then we'll move on to the next step. Maria?
Just to give you some background, yes, Dr. Gray has been really adamant about his position on this and has mentioned it at multiple meetings. Our attorneys have looked at that. This was before Grace, and have disagreed with the interpretation of the statute, because it does state that even unlicensed ADDSs must comply with all of the things below. And one of the things below, is, I don't have the statute. I mean, he did really well because he read it. I don't have it in front of me, but it does say that, that they are required even to comply with all of the subpoints on there. And in addition, from a non-attorney point of view, as a previous hospital pharmacist, the self-assessment forms are so helpful in assuring that we're meeting compliance. And so, that's one of the reasons why it is we have so many self-assessment forms, because it assures that the individual is able to review for compliance. And so for both reasons, I think we've discussed this into the ground, but I am appreciative of Dr. Gray's constant bringing it back up to make sure that his point is heard again.
Thank you, Chair Serpa. I think I'm satisfied, but if the members have any concerns or questions, please feel free to speak. And then after that, we'll go for a vote. And we're still on the committee recommended vote. KK, go ahead.
I just have a question or a clarity that I need. I think the new language proposes that the original board issued ADDS permit and current renewal are posted at the ADDS premises, where they may be clearly read by the public. Most of the time, they are posted or located inside a locked medicine room, which is not visible to public anyway. So I'm not too sure if 3.31 is necessary to have on that form. Just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, KK, for the comment. Since we're voting down on the recommendation, we'll consider that for probably the next motion. If you could please remind us on that. So with that, we're going to go for public comment. I mean, sorry, not public comment. We're going to go for vote. So Maria, how do you vote?
No.
Thank you, Jake.
No.
Thank you, Renee.
No.
Thank you, Indira.
No.
Thank you, Trevor.
No.
Thank you, Jesse.
No.
Thank you, KK.
No.
Thank you, Ricardo.
No.
Thank you. I vote no. The motion fails from the committee. And then,
And
so
this is
here-
Jose, and I vote no as well.
Oh, sorry, Jose. Oh, sorry, Jose. Sorry, Jose. I apologize. Apologies. Getting harder because there's so many now. All right. Okay. So moving on to the next step here, then we're gonna go back to that slide. There we go. Not that one. Sorry. Got a bit of slides. Moderators. that's where we are. Okay. So with that, Maria, Trevor had a motion on this, but are there anything else that we need to incorporate into the motion? Anne or Grace? Or Maria?
I would suggest that I would suggest perhaps that we modify the emotion. I'm really learning how to talk today. Sorry about that. Modify the emotion to include that we're approving the staff recommended modified text in response to the 15-day in response to the public comment period, as well as approve the recommended changes to incorporate new changes in the law as identified by the Enforcement and Compounding Committee and initiate a 15-day. So do you see I just kind of added in one more clause to pull in the Enforcement and Compounding Committee piece as well.
Okay. Very well said, Anne. Trevor, do you want to still make a motion as what Anne stated?
Yes, I would like to amend the motion as stated.
Thank you, Trevor. Maria, are you okay with that?
Yes, I second.
Thank you. Appreciate it. With that, members, any comments? This is a very technical subject. So seeing none, I'll go for public comment.
And this is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment on the motion, you can look for the question mark icon and type the word comment into the text box there and click send, or raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. On mobile devices, the hand icon may be behind the 3-dot other options of the controls. And I do not see any requests for comment on this. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you for the staff for working on this. I know we incorporated quite a bit of comments, so thank you to all the stakeholders for submitting comments, and we really appreciate it. With that, we're going to go for vote. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Renee. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Indira, how do you vote? Thank you. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes. The motion passes. All right, it's 10 o'clock. Anyone need a break?
Sure.
Use a break.
Okay. All right, we'll take 10-minute break. We'll come back 10:10. See you back in 10 minutes. We'll take a quick roll call. Maria, looks like you're fully back. Everything is good.
Here.
Hi, Maria. Jig.
I'm here.
Hi, Jig. Renee.
Hello, back.
Hi, Renee.
Present. Yeah.
Indira. Indira may not be back yet. Trevor.
Here.
Hi, Trevor. Jesse.
I'm here.
Hi, Jesse. Jose. Jose is not back yet. KK.
Present.
Thank you, KK. Ricardo. Hi, Ricardo.
Here. I'm here.
Thank you. All right. India, are you back? Jose, are you back? We'll get started. With the quorum is still here. So if you could just, once the videos turn on, I'll see if they could announce that they're returned. Next agenda item is agenda item 12, licensing committee report. This is going to be a long one. So I'm also pleased to provide a report on the actions of the licensing committee. Thank you to my fellow committee members, Jig Patel, Indira Cameron Banks, Jessica Crawley, Trevor, and then Jason Wise and myself. So starting with the first one is discussion and consideration of possible action on state protocol consistent with provisions of Business and Professions Code Section 4052.01 as amended in Senate Bill 1259, including proposed amendment to Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 1746.3. As you may recall, the board previously considered and established a support position on Senate Bill 1259, which sought amendment to Business and Professions Code Section 4052.01 to provide the authority for pharmacists to furnish Federal Food and Drug Administration approved opioid antagonists in accordance with standardized procedures or protocols developed under specified conditions. The governor signed this measure, which will become effective January 1st of 2023. As required in the statute, the board and the Medical Board of California must approve the regulation with consultation with the California Society of Addiction Medicine, the California Pharmacists Association, and other appropriate entities. The statute also specifies the areas that must be included in the standardized procedures. The required protocol for pharmacists is included in California Code of Regulations, Section 1746.3, and establishes the requirements of the standardized procedures established for pharmacists to furnish naloxone hydrochloride pursuant to Section 4052.01. You may recall from our prior discussion that as products are approved by the FDA, it is appropriate to evaluate the board's current regulations to establish flexibility in the regulation for furnishing of additional opioid antagonists approved by the FDA. Since our last meeting, staff worked with an expert in the field, Dr. Gasper, to develop language and secured feedback as required by the statute. As required by the statute, following draft of the proposed language, the draft was provided to the California Society of Addiction Medicine, who is offering one comment for consideration, which is moving a portion of the language to earlier in the section. No comments or concerns were identified by the Medical Board of California. I'm hopeful members had an opportunity to review the proposed language included in Attachment 1. The meeting materials provide a summary of the changes being proposed and the recommendation being offered by the committee. As required by statute, this proposed change must be approved by the Medical Board as well. If we approve action today, and will present before the Medical Board later this week, seeking their approval. Members, the meeting slide displays the committee's recommendation, which serve as the motion. Are there any comments from members before we open up for public comment? Members? And just for the record, Debbie, I believe Indira is here, but Jose, I still don't see. Jose, just let us know when you're back. All right, I don't see any member comments. Moderator, please open the line for public comments.
Certainly. And we're opening the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have any comment on the proposed motion, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen. In the text box, type the word comment and click send, or anyone may also raise their hand to request a comment, and each commenter will have 3 minutes. We have a couple of requests. First, I will send Keith Yoshizuka a request to unmute your microphone. 1 second, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. You're unmuted.
California Society of Health System Pharmacists. As a matter of policy, we have always advocated for inclusion of a particular drug class as opposed to a single drug entity. Of course, at the time, naloxone was the only entity, but as was discussed earlier by the board, changes in technology bring new drug classes. So we support this move to the class of opioid antagonists as opposed to the single drug entity naloxone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yoshizuka.
And our next request for comment comes from Stephen Gray. Stephen, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes. You're unmuted.
I'd just like to point out that there has been some lack of clarity and maybe this is an opportunity for the board to clarify. It's not clear that the statute and the regulation, whether or not they overrule what a pharmacist can do under a collaborative practice agreement. In other words, there have been people coming before the board that for years have described that they have furnished opioid antagonists, naloxone specifically, under a collaborative practice agreement. And they develop their own policies, procedures, protocols, et cetera, for doing that. And lately, there has been some comments made that all of those must comply with the details of this regulation. And that was not my understanding prior to the statute and prior to the development of this regulation. And I think that needs to be discussed or clarified. The second thing is that, as was just commented, the opening up to all opioid antagonists is a good idea, but we now anticipate that there will be some opioid antagonists, specifically naloxone, that may soon be OTC. And so the question then again becomes whether if the product, the opioid antagonist, is OTC, naloxone specifically is being proposed, again, does this regulation and all of its details require, are they required when the pharmacist is, or the pharmacy is furnishing an OTC product? Suggest that that be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Gray.
And I do not see any other requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great points. We'll have staff look into some stuff, but I believe we can proceed with this motion. So with that, any other member comments before we vote? Trevor?
Yes, I just want to speak in favor of this. I appreciate the comments that were raised. It's and I look forward to staff providing us some clarity on that. It's my understanding, based on the committee readings when we had the committee meeting, that by expanding the definition to opioid antagonist, that this is simply going to provide the leeway that pharmacists need in order to make any and all FDA-approved opioid antagonists available, whether it's over-the-counter, whether it's prescribed or whatnot. And by expanding the definition, we're not imposing any additional barriers or any additional rules beyond expanding the definition. And so I'm very supportive of making sure that our pharmacies and pharmacists have everything they need to fight the opioid epidemic with both this overdose treatment as well as what we're going to be discussing next. So I will be strongly voting in favor.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you for the comments. With that, we'll go for a vote. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jig, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Renee. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Indira. How do you vote? Thank you, Indira. Indira votes yes. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Jesse. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, KK. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. And I vote yes. The motion passes. All right, next item is discussion and consideration of possible state protocol to facilitate pharmacist-provided medication-assisted treatment pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 4052.A14, including proposed addition of Title 16 California Code of Regulations Section 1746.6. As included in the meeting materials, Business and Professions Code 4052A14 provide authority for pharmacists to provide medication-assisted treatment pursuant to a state protocol. During our committee meeting, we also considered proposed regulations establishing such a protocol. I do not intend to review all of the background information included in the meeting materials, but to help set the table, if you will, for this discussion, I want to ensure we have a common understanding of MAT. MAT is used to treat substance use disorder as well as to sustain recovery and prevent overdose. Recently, the federal law was changed to expand access to MAT, including removal of the X waiver requirement or the DATA data waiver, With this change in the federal law and the board's proposed regulation, I believe pharmacists that choose to provide MAT will be well positioned to serve as an important access point for patients in need of MAT. Attachment 2 includes the proposed regulation language considered by the committee. You will note from the meeting materials, experts in this field assisted staff with the development of the draft proposal. During our meeting, members generally spoke in support of the draft proposal and received public comment also in support. The committee is also offering a recommendation as displayed on the meeting slide. As part of your comments, if you have thoughts about specifically a private patient care area versus confidential patient care area that was brought up during our committee meeting, also any other member comments would be appreciated. Members, this is an exciting development for pharmacists, I believe. And so I'm hoping that we can proceed forward. Trevor?
Yes, I just wanted to add to my comments I made on the last item. As someone who is in active recovery right now, this is something I'm very excited about. MAT was not a part of my story, but I am a firm believer in an all of the above approach when it comes to treating addiction. And I think especially as we see pharmacists on the front lines of our opioid crisis, that by empowering them to do this, if they so choose, is just one more tool in the tool belt as we try to impact and push forward on this opioid and fight back against this opioid epidemic. And pharmacists are on the front lines, and so they are some of the most powerful people who can do this. So I am very excited by this. I will hold off on making a recommendation or a motion or a recommendation because I want to see what the conversation around confidential or private area is. That's not an expertise of mine, so I'd be interested in what other committee members have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Anyone else with any comments before? Oh, Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to add that to that and give some context. The reason why it came up is because we hear a lot of complaints across stores, particularly in community settings and chain community settings in particular, not necessarily independent, where pharmacists believe that they don't have sufficient area or a designated area where they can truly have a conversation with someone that won't be overheard, etc. We heard a lot of comments about confidential kind of being leaving it up to the pharmacist to make that determination on their own. And so I'm also curious to hear some feedback from people who weren't necessarily at the committee meeting to see what their thoughts on private versus confidential would be.
Thank you. I think my struggle for me is just a legal analysis of the difference, but obviously not a lawyer, so I don't know. But any other comments before we open up for public comment? Quiet group. I feel like it's calm before the storm as we proceed through this agenda items in a licensing committee. Okay, so I will open up for public comment.
And we have opened up the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send. Or the other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. And each person will have 3 minutes. We have one request for comment from Keith Yoshizuka. And Keith, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your mic, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. In retrospect, when this legislation was going through, the California Society of Health System Pharmacists requested an amendment that was accepted because the original language was for non-opiate medication-assisted treatment. When the standard of, the standard is used is buprenorphine, which is a Schedule III controlled substance. So in developing the protocol and part of the regulations, May I request, similar to what the board did with the travel meds, is remind the pharmacists that they must obtain their personal DEA registration. They can't use the DEA registration for the pharmacy if they're going to be furnishing the buprenorphine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yoshizuka.
And our next request for comment comes from Stephen Gray. Stephen, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you again. I completely agree with the comments that were just made by Keith. It should be clear that the pharmacist needs their DEA registration or personal DEA registration. There is a website that is for the DEA publishes that shows that pharmacists in California can furnish all schedules of controlled substances as a mid-level practitioner if they get that DEA registration. But I find a lot of pharmacists don't know about that. So I think it should be said here exactly. There may be other references in the statute to that requirement, but it's often too often overlooked. Next, the comments I made earlier about how this affects collaborative practice agreements. Again, it's not clear what the intent is because we did have pharmacists that were providing some types of medication-assisted treatment, maybe not buprenorphine, under collaborative practice agreements. And so I think that needs to be clarified and would suggest that that be considered as part of maybe the discussion at a future meeting. And as far as the privacy goes, I understand that, but pharmacists have been dealing with very private encounters with patients for over 30 years for sexually transmitted diseases, for providing injections, et cetera. And they find a way to do it that satisfies the patients. Some patients are satisfied with the privacy, some patients are not. If you put strict limits on privacy accommodations, then you basically are denying medication-assisted treatment to a patient that needs it and is willing to take the privacy that the pharmacy offers. And there are different levels of that. So what I would encourage you to not require a strict room or separation. Let the patients and the pharmacists work that out. They've done it for decades now, depending upon the type of therapy, the patient, et cetera. Confidentiality is different. You can provide and guarantee confidentiality by taking adequate precautions that don't require a separate room, et cetera. That is already a requirement of pharmacy law and ethical practice as a pharmacist. So I would encourage you not to go down the road of too strict of a privacy environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
And there are no other requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. I appreciate the comments. I believe we'll have ample opportunity as this is the initial rulemaking package that will be submitted after this motion is approved. So I'm sure we'll have 45-day comment period as well as many opportunities. So I recommend we proceed with the committee recommendation. With that, call for the vote. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes, the motion passes. We'll have a lot more opportunity. Please be sure to submit written comments when the regulation is open for public comment period. Hopefully will be happening soon after today's meeting. Next agenda item is discussion and consideration of pharmacists provided HIV pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis, including presentations. Members, as detailed in the meeting materials, there are a number of ways in which a pharmacy can engage with a patient to provide HIV PrEP and PAP, including through traditional dispensing functions, through collaborative practice agreements, and through provisions established in Senate Bill 159, 159. As you may recall, during our October board meeting, we received a presentation on research underway on pharmacist-furnished HIV prevention. The results of the research is not yet available. However, when it is, the board will receive a presentation on the outcome. During our meeting, members received presentations on pharmacist-driven models currently used to expand access to HIV PrEP and PEP. As part of presentations, members learned about the models used to provide HIV PrEP and PEP services. Members also learned about barriers to care, which were quite significant. Common themes arose around barriers included reimbursement challenges and the 60-day limit on furnishing PrEP. Given the barriers identified, the committee believes it may be appropriate to dedicate a meeting to learn more from stakeholders about these issues. I believe there are actions we can take to remove barriers to care, but I believe actions must be also taken by others, including payers, to fully actualize this expanded access to care. I would like to ask staff to work with the Office of AIDS to expand education on funding sources available at pharmacists, if any. Members, do you have any comments on this topic? Trevor, go ahead.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a really incredible presentation by Dr. Lopez and Dr. Hopkins. And really, it seemed like one of the main barriers to SB 159, whose goal was to get PEP and PrEP in every pharmacy as soon as possible, even with the 60-day limit. However, the real barrier seems to be the lack of insurance reimbursement for the tests necessary, the HIV tests necessary that are required in order to prescribe PEP and PrEP, and only through some unique collaborations where have these tests been able to be covered either by nonprofit funding or public funding. So there does seem to be a necessary legislative fix for this gap that was created during the crafting of SB 159, and so it's something I'll be paying close attention to, and appreciate your leadership in raising awareness of this and having the board collaborate with the HIV advocates to figure out how we can get PEP and PrEP in as many pharmacies as possible and make it as accessible as possible across the state.
Thank you, Trevor. And we look forward to any legislative update this year. Hopefully something exciting will come about this year, and we will keep all of you posted. With that, any other member comments? We'll go to public comment. Moderator, please open the line for public comment.
Certainly, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into the text box and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand to request a comment. Each commenter will have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Next agenda item is D, discussion and consideration and possible action on discontinuance of business by a pharmacy and potential changes to Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 1708.2. During our meeting, the committee continued its discussion on changes on the board's requirement for discontinuance of business. I draw your attention to the relevant provisions of pharmacy law noted in the meeting material. In prior discussion, we discussed general areas of complaints received related to this issue, including scenarios where a pharmacy has closed and a patient cannot receive a refill because they are unable to contact the pharmacy to request a prescription transfer, or where a pharmacy has closed and transferred patient prescription refills to another pharmacy not of the patient's choosing. We also considered a number of policy questions which are also detailed in the meeting material. After consideration of the issue and policy questions, as a committee, we determined changes to current regulation requirements was appropriate. We requested that the staff develop proposed language for our consideration. Attachment 4 includes the language considered during our meeting. As displayed in the meeting slide, the committee is offering a recommendation. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment.
And this is the moderator, and we are opening the Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand to request to be commented by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. And we have a request for comment from Stephen Gray. Stephen, I'm going to send you a request. Unmute your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you again. During the committee discussion, I mentioned a couple of things that I think should be considered, and again, perhaps FAQ or some way. For an example, the proposed regulation indicates that the pharmacy that's going to discontinue business or is going to be closed, for that matter, for more than 4 days, or the same concept at least, provide the board with a copy of the notice. It's not clear what the board's going to do with that. Is it going to post all these notices on the board's website so that the public can search to find out if the pharmacy did go out of business, what the information is, where the pharmacy is, etc. It just wasn't clear during our discussion what the board was going to do with all these notices. I think that would be a great idea. I know it's going to require some work and some maintenance of the website, but it's also a very important issue, especially as we have recently received notice of a lot of pharmacies by some of the major chains are going to close, or at least cut back hours, which also could be cut back hours of the day. And some of this is because of the pharmacist shortage. I know of personally, there have been complaints in the Coachella Valley that they can't find enough pharmacists, and so they're closing for days at a time, some of the chain drugstores. And the second thing is, if it's not going to be posted, maybe the regulation should be required to be put, the information should be put on the pharmacy's website. Consumers are used to going to pharmacy websites to find out information. Wouldn't it be nice if they could go to the website that is still maintained by the chain or the other organization as a whole and find out where their prescriptions are now that that particular pharmacy was closed or is going to be closed for a section? So I would hope that that could be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
And I do not see any other requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator.
You're welcome.
All right, and ready for a vote. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jake, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me, yes.
Gotcha. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes, the motion passes. All right, moving forward. Discussion E, discussion and consideration and legal requirements for non-resident pharmacies, including possible statutory change to require licensure by the pharmacist in charge. During our meeting, we also continued our discussion on potential changes to licensure requirements for the pharmacist in charge working in a non-resident pharmacy. The meeting materials include the definition of a pharmacist in charge as a pharmacist proposed by a pharmacy and approved by the board as a supervisor or manager responsible for ensuring the pharmacy's compliance with all state and federal laws and regulations pertaining to the practice of pharmacy. As required by law, every pharmacy must designate a PIC who is responsible for the pharmacist's compliance with state and federal laws. California law requires that any pharmacy located outside the state that provides services into California shall be considered a non-resident pharmacy. This section requires licensure as a non-resident pharmacy. There are no current requirements for pharmacists working in these pharmacies to be licensed in California, even when providing care to California patients. Further, there is no requirement for the PIC of the non-resident pharmacy to be licensed in California. Rather, California law currently just establishes a prohibition for a pharmacist to provide services to California patients if the pharmacist's license was revoked in California. During our prior discussion, we reviewed the model rules provided by the NABP, National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, provided for boards to consider as part of the regulation of the practice of pharmacy. Regarding the regulation of non-resident pharmacies, the model rules include a requirement for a pharmacist to be licensed in the state in which it is providing services to patients. Members also review the range of requirements other states require for licensure of staff working out of state, but providing care to their residents. During the meeting, we discussed draft statutory language, which is included in attachment 5. You'll note from the meeting materials that during the meeting, members received comments both in support of the proposal as well as in opposition. Committee is recommending to sponsor legislation related to legal requirements for non-resident pharmacy. Members, do you have any comments or questions on the proposed language? KK, go ahead.
I'm just going to talk about from my perspective on the long-term care side. Long-term care pharmacies serve the communities that are really old and sick and frail, mostly seniors. And the number of pharmacies serving a number of people is very large. And we don't have the portability as a retail pharmacy may have. So if something happens, a natural disaster happens or whatever, there is no way another pharmacy that can take over 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 patients overnight if something happens like earthquake happen. So we rely on that portability and multiple licensures held by other pharmacies in other states where some of the work can be done just in case in the emergencies or whatnot. It's already a struggle trying to find other pharmacies willing to get licensed for California. Adding another layer of getting licensed by PIC for the California board just adds one more layer of complexity that at least long-term care industry can live without, because we are really a niche market. I occasionally come across people who are pharmacists for 10, 15 years and never heard of a long-term care pharmacy. So we operate in a kind of a corner where we don't have the similar portability as we have with retail or a chain pharmacy. So we would really like to not have this burden imposed on us, where it is already hard to serve this very large community. One pharmacy going down is few thousand patients, and not being able to move that work where we can meaningfully serve this community, where the other pharmacists have experience with the long-term care requirement of the chart orders, IV orders, TPN, which is a typical retail pharmacist is not familiar to. So those are the specialty things that we do, and really like to reconsider having the licensure requirement for the PIC who is out-of-state pharmacy license. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment, KK. Any other member comments? Jesse?
Hi, thank you. I just want to say at the end of the day, I do think that there needs to be some accountability for every pharmacy. I think that's a very good example that KK provided. But without having a PIC, there's really no guarantee that the board has that can assure that a pharmacy is truly operating under California standards. So I think that's just kind of the perspective to go through, but I do appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Any other member comments? Renee, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Renee.
So sorry. Yes, I mean, I'm probably just going to echo Jessica's comments. Well, I do, I mean, that's an interesting concern that I'm not aware of from my practice setting that KK mentioned. So I think there are some things to consider, but I would be concerned that that there is not someone at these pharmacies who understands the requirements in California, especially as it relates to compounding. Some other states are not as, let's say, informed tight with what is required to be done. So I just feel like that would be a safeguard for patients. And I don't think it seems overburdensome to require the one pharmacist in charge. It's not necessarily, my understanding, it looks like it's not all pharmacists. Is that correct? It's the PIC?
Right.
Yes.
PIC.
Yes. So, I mean, that is a major responsibility, and I just would support this. Yeah.
Thank you for the comment, Renee. Okay, I will open up for public comment if there's no other member comments. All right, moderator, please open the line for public comment.
Certainly, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon and type the word comment into the text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Our first comment request comes from someone logged into WebEx as Mark Johnson. Mark, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and you will have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. You're unmuted.
Thank you. This is Mark Johnston with CVS Health. The FTC published a paper called Options to Enhance Occupational License Portability in September of 2018, whereby the FTC staff encouraged state licensing boards to use options that will enhance portability while imposing the fewest restrictions. Why? Because, and I'll quote, multi-state licensing requirements can limit consumers' access to services. Fearing that the feds will act legislatively, states have responded first. Vermont is now the second state that does not have a law exam. New Hampshire is running a bill to become the third state that does not require a PIC. NABP is reviewing the matter, and I encourage the board to seek their input. The motion would require that non-resident PICs obtain California licensure, including taking the California jurisprudence exam, which is arguably the most difficult jurisprudence exam, as it also is clinical in nature. The logistics of a non-resident taking a California exam is a barrier, but the vast majority of the test does not pertain to non-residents. As an example, all of the great expanded pharmacist practice that exists in California, including advanced practice pharmacists, CPAs, drug furnishing, CLIA-waived testing, immunizations, etc., have no bearing on a non-resident PIC, but are topics for questions on the exam. This test is an unfair barrier to entry and is exactly what the FTC has asked the boards not to do. Realizing this, Iowa created a separate pathway for non-resident PIC, which includes a mandatory educational module that is created by their board specifically for the Iowa laws that pertain to non-residents. This is a more reasonable approach and is what Iowa refers to as registration versus full-blown licensure. Regardless of terminology, I implore the board to not support the motion and instead make a more informed decision by contacting NABP, the FTC, the Iowa Board of Pharmacy, etc., as to not create barriers to license portability that could impact patient access to care, which is a component of public safety that the board should be considering in making these decisions. Lastly, I'll say that the board can hold the non-resident license responsible, so there currently is accountability. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment, Mark.
And our next request from comment comes from Stephen Gray. Stephen, I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning.
Thank you again. I want to support what was just heard from Mark Johnston, and I want you to reconsider, please. You've mentioned that it's not much of a burden to be licensed. In these out-of-state pharmacies, whether they're for a mail order, whether they support skilled nursing facilities, specialty pharmacies, Many of those are large facilities with a huge staff. They have huge responsibilities across the country. The PIC, the real PIC, the person that is running that has all of the authority to hire, fire, discipline, modify their policies, procedures, etc., is probably not a recent graduate. In fact, you wouldn't want a recent graduate with that much responsibility because it is so complex in personnel matters, etc. So therefore, I think what Mark Johnson has recommended is a very reasonable approach into developing some other requirement other than licensure. It has been stated during the committee that the goal is to have them understand what the requirements are, not the clinical pharmacy, not the advanced practice, but what the legal requirements are and the standards for dispensing, labeling, and transporting, etc. So it seems that there should be some way to make sure that that pharmacy's PIC knows that and is verified without requiring licensure. Remember, in California, to get licensed, you have to take the most recent NABP exam. And many of these PICs, like I said, are not recent graduates. So that means they would have to take the NABP exam all over again, the recent one. Think about how long you've been out of school, perhaps as a pharmacist, and whether or not you could pass the most recent NABP exam and also the California license exam, which, as was stated, is primarily clinical. Most of it is clinical, not on law. So perhaps another method should be explored rather than licensure. And I would also comment, be careful about the use of the word registration, because under California law, specifically in statute, the terms licensure and registration are synonymous. So you need to be careful how you would describe this alternative method. I really encourage you not to go forward with this legislation at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment, Dr. Gray.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Jennifer Snyder. Jennifer, I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. You're unmuted.
Snyder, representing California Retailers Association. I'd like to echo the comments of Mark Johnston, your previous speaker. On behalf of the association, I know that we have commented previously that we do have concerns about requiring non-resident pharmacists in charge to obtain licensure in California and believe it'll have a negative impact on patient access to pharmacy services, given the burden this will place on non-resident PICs. As Mark mentioned, there's other viable options to ensure that non-resident PICs have sufficient understanding of California law, such as the term registration, except sounds like in California, we would need to come up with a different term. But it would be similar to what Iowa has done to assure that PICs, non-resident PICs, have some understanding of the law in California, but would not have to go through comprehensive, full-blown non-resident licensure requirements. So we would just urge the board to take a little bit longer look at this and do a little bit more research before you determine what you're going forward with, and definitely look at maybe some alternative options that'll assure patient access to pharmacy services. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
And our next request for comment comes from John Gray. John, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning.
So much. This is John Gray. I'm a registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. Just want to kind of amplify a few things that some of my colleagues have said. First, board member Jha pointing out that in some cases, having the flexibility of another California licensed pharmacy that is physically located outside of California is very important for contingencies and, specifically for natural disaster planning and response. This is not an issue that is limited to the home health kind of pharmacy industry. Another area where this could certainly be important is for patients who utilize mail order pharmacy services. There are a cohort of patients who do use mail order pharmacy services and a cohort that very much prefer mail order pharmacy services, and some who rely on it, who simply are not able to leave their house to go to their local pharmacy to pick up prescriptions. So it is important for organizations that operate that operate large mail order operations to have the ability to quickly shift workload to another mail order operation in the event of a natural disaster. I see PIC licensure as a potential barrier to that flexibility. Also want to amplify what my colleague Mark Johnston said around the issues with occupational licensing. I'll point out another article that was published by the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis that is titled "How Occupational Licensing Limits Access to Jobs Among Workers of Color." Subtitle, "Institutional Barriers Contribute to Workers of Color Being Licensed at Much Lower Rates." So again, just would encourage the board to consider the unintended consequences of this approach. And lastly, if the board feels strongly that, in some cases, licensure of the PIC is important, perhaps there's a pathway to, in the statutory proposal, waive this requirement for organizations that operate pharmacies in California already. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you for the comment, Dr. Gray.
And our next request for comment is from someone logged into WebEx as Lori Walmsley. Lori, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 3 minutes. You're unmuted.
Walgreens. I would like to echo the comments of the prior commenter related to looking for other options to hold pharmacies accountable. As Mark Johnston mentioned, the pharmacies are themselves licensed in California, so there is that already mechanism for the board to hold pharmacies accountable. While I know the primary attempt here is probably to address large mail order pharmacies, wanted to point out that there are other smaller community pharmacies that are located out of state that provide primarily specialty medications, many of which are limited distribution drugs, which don't have large staffs. So there may be a significant barrier to finding somebody that meets all of the requirements to hold that license. And I would hate to see the unintended consequence of limiting patient access, especially to some of these more rare and specialized medications. So again, would echo the comments that looking for other alternative ways through some sort of registration or endorsement process for the non-resident PIC to be licensed versus the full licensure for California would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Paige Talley. Paige, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning.
Thank you. I just want to briefly state that I agree with Mark Johnston and Steve Gray and Lori Walmsley that we need to look at alternatives for this. The majority of my members I represent the California Council for the Advancement of Pharmacy. It's a difficult name. But the majority of my members are long-term care, and many of the PICs are licensed in other states, but there's not so many that can pass the exams here, and I think it's very challenging. So I agree with Mark and Steve Gray and John Gray and Lori Walmsley that we need to look at alternatives. I do have compounding, home infusion, and specialty pharmacies as well, but I'm focused more on long-term care today. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Paige.
And there are no other requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you. I see Maria, your hand is raised. Maria, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up a couple of points after hearing the public comment. some really valuable information is there. But also, I'm still very concerned about the information that's in the record here. I just reread again the background and how other states are doing this. So it's not like we're totally unusual. It is true that California test is much harder than others. So that could be a potential barrier. But I'm struggling with the great comments that were made by the members of the public with the overarching requirement of having some personal accountability. We have in here, you also mentioned that there are issues where holding a pharmacy license accountable was potentially not as beneficial as holding an individual responsible. And we're looking at protection of the public and citizens of California, a huge responsibility. But I also can see that taking a test could be difficult for some people who have been out of school for such a long time. I guess if I were to weigh it, I would put the protection of the public higher than the difficult nature of passing the test. But I think it's going to, I'm interested to see if other board members have thoughts as a result of the public comment.
Thank you, Maria. Jake, your hand is raised. Go ahead, Jake. Oh my gosh, we are getting a lot of comments. I knew the storm was coming. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, President. No, some very credible comments from the public, and I'm just concerned that there are barriers of passing the test. Obviously, it's very important that whoever is working and on any step of filling this prescription should be well aware of California laws for the safety of Californians. Find balance there. But given the barriers at hand and if we don't get all of these PICs to get licensed in time, it creates a major issue of access to the most vulnerable out there that requires these meds. We're talking about specialized compounds, specialty meds, and just prescriptions for our seniors in nursing homes, etc. So I feel that at this time we should table it, vote it down, and bring it back to committee for further discussion to this matter, and go over all the details one more time, and then take a decision that works for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Jake. Trevor?
Yes, it's very listening to these comments and getting additional input has been very important. And I think as I listen to these, as the discussion that we've had in committee and now here, I intend to vote in favor of this regulation, because especially with California being the fourth largest economy in the world, we set the standards for the rest of the country, and I want to make sure that we are not lowering our pharmaceutical standards because of someone in another state. And I want to make sure that, if anything, that through our own tests and what we have here, we can actually set the standard and continue to set the standard for other states and the quality of the care we have. And I think if someone, especially if you haven't taken a test before or it haven't happened in a while, I think that making sure that folks are able to fully comprehend what we do here, the standards we have, and how we do it, can only make the profession better, and also ensure greater care for our consumers, which is our primary responsibility. So just wanted to share my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Trevor. KK?
Hi. So, just wanted to mirror what Jig has already said, that we really want to reconsider this. I think the safety standards are important, but we are talking about, and again, I'm talking from my side of things, long-term care pharmacies, which are very large operations with 20, 30, 35 pharmacists working, and having pharmacists in charge licensed doesn't necessarily look into the day-to-day operations or every single prescription. He or she is more responsible for coaching and counseling other pharmacists in the matters of other states, which is something I don't have a major concern about, but it is definitely important for contingency planning, the specialty services that we provide, long-term care, most vulnerable people that we service. I think it'll be important if we reconsider that. Difficulty of taking CPJE or the age of the PIC is really not of a concern, because I understand that they, by holding their license in their respective state, are up to date. My more concern is that we are adding one more barrier to a process that is already complicated. Not very willing candidates are available for becoming PIC. And if you add the layer of adding multiple state licensure, I guarantee you that reduces the talent pool available for any pharmacy to hire. So looking at that, all those barriers, I would also support what Jig said and like to have this for reconsideration. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, KK, for the comments. All right, Jesse?
Thank you. My comments are pretty much in line with what Maria had said previously. I appreciate the different perspectives and noting that it's not just mail order, it's also specialty medications, long-term care, compounding, and a lot of elderly populations. And with that, I think it's even more important that we're ensuring there's some personal accountability, that the people who are operating the pharmacy have an understanding of California standards, particularly because we have such high-risk medications and high-risk populations. It's for me, it's even more of a reason why there should be some sort of personal licensure within those facilities. And I do want to remind people that there is a grace period to give these pharmacies time to comply. And there was one public comment at the licensing meeting from someone who had licensure, I believe they said in about 17 different states, who actually did speak in favor of this and said that, the barrier of getting multiple licensure wasn't that difficult in their eyes, if I'm remembering correctly. Of course, it's going to take time, but I think any one of us licensed right now, if we had to retake the exam, we could do it. It would take time, but it's not an impossible task to do. So considering all those things, I absolutely still feel very strongly that we should be supporting this proposal.
Thank you, Jesse. Jake?
I just wanted to make another comment of just the sheer number of enrollments in pharmacy schools, availability, and all of that. It's going to snowball into this issue of access in this state. And having these barriers, it's going to create a big problem. I agree with Trevor that, we have this high standard and we should maintain it. And we have. I mean, the test is not the easiest one to pass, probably one of the most difficult one in the country. We do have this, but where's the fine balance where we create everything at a very high standard, but then when the population needs these services, it's not available. And then God forbid, we are so prone to all these natural disasters, from earthquakes to fires and etc. What happens during that time? So let's be mindful before making a decision on what we create. Yes, we want to create a high standard, but at what expense? That's the question. And that's why I say, if we look for an alternative other than PIC being licensed in California, there are other ways of getting them in line and to raise the standard of their practice while filling prescriptions in California. So we should consider taking it back to committee. We should talk about it more in detail, get feedback, maybe lean on to other resources that could be available. And then come back to this. Let's not hurry into it. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Jake. Renee?
Yeah, in hearing those, so I appreciate all those comments. There possibly could be some different way, but in light of that, what I'm hearing is that we're sort of pitting our mandate for consumer care with and protection with a challenging test for a PIC. And so sorry. So that's just a concern for me. I don't see that that's really a choice overall. But I haven't been in these meetings to hear everything, but I'm just concerned about that, especially when what keeps being mentioned is the most vulnerable populations. Then they're the most vulnerable to errors and low standards.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments, Renee. I'll just say a couple of global statements. I think, first of all, I think the board is very interested in ensuring the PICs has this autonomy. That's been our focus for the last few years, really trying to understand the PICs, understand the laws and regulations of the state of California. We've obviously had some issues with that, and this is why we had to bring this up due to some enforcement cases as well, showing the pharmacists were really not aware of the laws and regulations of this state. And, you know, I also want to echo that the comments received about access. I understand those concerns, but, you know, in situations, there are, I believe, waivers are available. I'm going to put Ann on the spot if there's any opportunities to address those concerns. I know you're not a lawyer, Ann, but I know you know our law very well. So if you want to say anything about that, possibilities for waiver opportunities in certain situations.
I'm going to maybe connect some dots, and if I've connected some dots that are inappropriate, I apologize. So I think, President O, what you're probably referring to is several of comments have spoken about potential challenges in the event of a declared disaster, an earthquake, or those kinds of things, and the ability to pivot if necessary. So I do think that one of the things that COVID, as well as many others, fires and those kinds of things, is the board's unique authority under 4062 to waive provisions of pharmacy law. So we've relied on that, through COVID, but we've also done it in response to fires, local disasters as well, where we've waived a provision of the law to ensure continuity of patient care during those times. And I would expect that we would be able to do the same. I think Eileen Zonin could probably speak to this probably better than me. But yes, I do believe that, for provisions of 4062. And I do think that, the provisions of the law allow for use of an interim PIC, and our law already allows for transition periods and, recognizes that, there are times when you may not be able to identify someone right away, and establishes what those processes might look like. So I'm just throwing that out there as, things that might be helpful to discuss, or, might be helpful for the board in its consideration. And then just would clarify that someone that is currently licensed in another state as a pharmacist would not be required to retake the NAPLEX. I do think that was maybe one of the public comments. So just wanted to clarify that an individual that's licensed in another jurisdiction seeking licensure in California is not required to retake the NAPLEX. I do think I heard that as a public comment. So just throwing that in as well, should that be helpful information for members.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate it. I'm sure this vote will be close. So I'm just going to provide opportunity for anyone to speak their mind before we vote. Okay, we're ready for votes. All right, Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jig, how do you vote?
No.
Thank you, Jig. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Indira. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Indira. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jose is dropped off momentarily. I believe he is going to come back. KK, how do you vote?
No.
Thank you, KK. Ricardo, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. And I vote yes. The motion passes. Considering that this had significant comments, just a reminder, this is just a very first step of many steps for this. And that's not any way I'm excusing this vote, just sharing that there are ample opportunities for our board to have this discussion, and many avenues in the legislative proposal as well. Thank you for all the comments. Really appreciate it. It's 11:16. I'm going to try to plan on taking lunch break at 12. So just wanted to confirm if everyone is okay for us to proceed. So we'll just 45 more minutes, and then we'll take a lunch break. All right, we'll proceed with next agenda item F, discussion and consideration and possible action on continuing education requirements for pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, including development of regulation language to facilitate implementation of recently enacted legislation. Members, the meeting materials include the relevant sections of law and background on this issue, including attachment 6 is draft regulation language to establish the continuing education requirements for cultural competency as required by the legislation. I would also like to highlight that in addition, the provisions related to pharmacists also include consolidation of various CE requirements for pharmacists that are currently included in various provisions of statute and regulation. In addition, the proposed language establishes new regulations defining the continuing education requirements for pharmacy technicians that mirror the process used for pharmacist renewal. During the discussion during our committee meeting, members requested staff confirm that the language was sufficiently specific to ensure the required course content is included. Subsequent to the meeting, staff confirmed with Regulation Council the language is appropriate and offered additional language to further cross-reference the statute. The language approved with the clarifying language is included in attachment 6. Also included in the meeting materials and displayed on the meeting slide is the committee's recommendation. Members, do you have any comments or questions on the committee's recommendation? All right, hearing none, moderator, please open the line for public comment.
Certainly, we're opening up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen. Type the word comment in the text box and click send. Anyone may also raise their hand to request a comment by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. With the committee recommendation serving as a motion and public comment, we'll go for vote. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jig, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Jig. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Renee. Indira, how do you vote? Thank you. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, not back yet. KK, how do you vote? I don't see KK. Oh, there you are.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Ricardo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes. The motion passes. Next is item G, discussion and consideration of Business and Professions Code Section 4111. In July of last year, the committee considered the issue of ownership prohibitions specifically related to prescriber ownership, including a prohibition by a person who shares a community or other financial interest with a prescriber. At that time, the committee considered proposed language that could be used to create flexibility for such ownership while maintaining the legislative intent of the prohibition. The meeting materials provide significant background on the issue, so I do not intend to review the information except to highlight at the time of our discussion, in response to public comment, the committee determined that additional consideration of other forms of ownership prohibitions should be considered related to pharmacist ownership. Attachment 7 includes considered by the committee language that could be used to expand provisions to allow a pharmacist that is authorized to issue a drug order under specified condition to also own a pharmacy. You'll note from the meeting slide and meeting materials that committee is offering a recommendation to sponsor legislation. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the language on the committee's recommendation? none, moderator, please open the line for public comment.
Certainly, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, they can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. Or anyone may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in user can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank
you. With the committee recommendation serving as a motion and public comment received, we'll take a vote. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Trevor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes, the motion passes. All right, last agenda item for licensing is H, discussion and consideration of provisions for remote processing. The last item for discussion is consideration of the board's legal requirements for remote processing. To facilitate physical distancing early in the COVID-19 pandemic, the board approved a waiver to extend the provisions for remote processing. The waiver is based on the board's authority in Business and Professions Code Section 4062 and is limited in duration. The meeting materials contain extensive information on remote processing and the remote processing waiver that has been in effect for a majority of the pandemic. The waiver is set to expire May 28, 2023. As I stated during the meeting, through the years, it appears that some may have overstated the provisions and flexibilities provided in California law. The approval and release of the waiver then appear to cause a stir among some that may have implemented practices that exceed what the law provides in California. We're not here today to discuss this. Specifically, under Business and Professions Code Section 4071.1, a pharmacist may electronically enter a prescription or an order as defined in Section 4019 into a pharmacy's or hospital's computer system from any location outside of the pharmacy or hospital with the permission of the pharmacy or hospital. Controlled substances are explicitly exempt from these provisions. Under the conditions of the waiver, however, the board expanded authority for pharmacists to receive, interpret, evaluate, clarify, and approve medication orders and prescriptions, including such orders for controlled medications. The waiver allowed for order entry, other data entry, performing prospective drug utilization review, interpreting clinical data, insurance processing, performing therapeutic interventions, providing drug information services, and authorizing release of medication for administration. The waiver does not permit dispensing of a drug or final product verification by remote processing. Although the waiver has been in place for a significant period of time, it is limited in duration, and unless a legislation is passed at the end of the waiver, provisions of the law will return to those currently included in 4071.1. I'm going to say this again. It is limited in duration, and unless a legislation is passed at the end of the waiver, provisions of the law will return to those currently included in 4071.1. During the committee meeting, we spent a significant amount of time discussing the policy questions included in the meeting materials. In general, there appeared to be consensus that changes were necessary for inpatient provisions. However, solution on possible expansion for outpatient has not yet been identified. With members' agreement, I would like to seek feedback on 3 questions included in the meeting materials. I believe these questions will provide guidance to our committee as we continue our evaluation of this issue. I anticipate there will be significant public comments as well as a very robust discussion on this matter. I'll start with the first one. Does the board believe permanent changes to the board's current remote processing provisions are appropriate? Just gonna start with myself. I believe this will be a little bit contentious, maybe. So we'll, in general, I do believe yes, but there has to be some guardrails and limitations, and might be mindful of all the potential consequences of possible problems that may issue with remote processing. With that, I'm gonna open it up. Please, members, I'm sure everyone will have something to say on this issue. Maybe not, maybe. Jake?
Thank you, President Au. Remote processing has been a blessing during this pandemic. And just like all other innovations, for example, this meeting, we are having it remotely for a reason. It's not that there is a fear of COVID or anything, but there is some substantial savings that are involved for DCA and the board if we do it this way. And similarly, remote processing for the pharmacy, it opened eyes for various organizations that have multiple locations where a web of professionals got together and got things done, especially not just because it was fear of the pandemic, but it was the limitations that the society brought upon some of these individuals that are licensed professionals but could not get out and physically go work. They could work from home and comply with the laws and get the work done. And for those that were in the pharmacies, it's been blessing for getting that additional help, which could be done remotely, and they could productively take care of the customer in front of them or the patient in front of them in the hospital setting. And I feel that we should have it extended to pharmacists, technicians, and obviously some guardrails will be required. There are some concerns of where this person is physically located. There are security measures that needs to be done. Obviously HIPAA and privacy, all of those compliance. So guardrails are required more than what we had during pandemic. But I think it's been a blessing, and we should enable our licensed professionals to be able to practice that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate the comments. Jesse? Oh, apologies. By the way, I should probably add this in the comments at the beginning, but there was a motion from last year that was voted. We tried to sponsor legislation. However, there was significant resistance at the legislative level, so it did not move last year, just for the context. So that's why it's back here. All right, Jesse?
Thank you. So I personally am on the fence about it. From the feedback that we've heard at the licensing committee meeting, it seems like there are some significant differences depending on setting. So of course, it seems in an acute setting when you may have the need for an overnight pharmacist to approve urgent or emergency medication. Absolutely. It seems like remote processing, of course, is essential in those sort of scenarios. Where the concerns obviously come is where we get into the guardrails, and particularly with community chain settings, the biggest concern is how that will impact working conditions long term. Of course, there's been a lot of commentary that it will hopefully relieve the burden that are currently on our community chain pharmacists, but the concern is that long term, that the scheduling and the hours and the workforce will end up being inadvertently cut long term and just create more burden on the staff. I think obviously we talked a little bit about what parts and aspects can actually be done virtually. So we talked about the tactile benefits of actually physically verifying the final end product, and then record keeping concerns is a huge thing that we have to work out as well.
Thank you for the comment, Jesse. KK?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I would like to add also that pandemic has underlined the importance of being able to do this work. A couple of things, again, talking from my side of the work stream, long-term care pharmacies, it reduces the barrier to the entry. A lot more people can work from home, and that increases the, availability of pharmacists that usually used to be a problem. Now we have a larger pool to select from. If we can work on defining what can be done by a technician and pharmacist as a remote worker, I think that will be a useful thing. And again, working more uniformly towards the data access and data security standards that allow this kind of work to, COVID allowed us to beta test that, yes, it is useful, right? And efficacy is not a question here, but now safety is the one that we need to work on. That how can we make data more secure? What kind of standards we can impose for somebody to work? So their parent organization, the companies can provide those data and HIPAA and security standards that can provide to make sure that California's patients' data is secure. But I think as far as utility or usability of this remote processing is concerned, I think it has proved the case already. And I would really like to see if we work towards definition of actions or definition of things that can be done remotely, and some really uniform data security measures that can be enforced across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, KK. Maria?
Hi, thank you. I think this is a very complex subject with many different arms, I guess you could say, to really fully discuss. It's not something that's quick and easy. That's why I think that we need a lot more discussion and testimony and thought on remote processing, the locations, the personnel, pharmacists and tech. And so I would suggest that we continue that dialogue, but separate from the more urgent issue in my world, which is, acute care. The more urgent issue is in question number 2. So I look forward to talking about that in question number 2.
Thank you, Maria. Next is Trevor.
Thanks. Yeah, this was a very interesting discussion as we went through a longer list of questions in the committee hearing and hearing the testimony of folks. A couple of the broader points that I took away as I've been, no pun intended, processing all of the information is one, the data aspect of things. That was one of the big touch points for me, was making sure that I had confidence that data was fully protected. The second one was going off of Jesse's concerns about the labor end of things, and making sure that one of the things that brought me to the Board of Pharmacy was to do everything we could to push back against the opioid epidemic, and making sure that someone remotely has similar constraints or accountability to make sure that we're not just prescribing opioids left and right. There's that. And so these are a couple of the broader level concerns, which I think in a nuanced, very effective piece of legislation can be addressed. One of the things that I came towards the end was about penalties that can be held to the pharmacies and the pharmacists themselves if someone who's doing this remote processing, if it's in a secure location, if they commit to having the data, there's an auditing process, all of these things. How do we make sure that the guardrails there are significant enough that in the event they are abused or they are broken, that there's a significant enough penalty to make sure that these remote processing facilities, whether it's in someone's bedroom or whether it's in off-site somewhere, that they are significant enough to prevent any sort of misuse or lax handling of data and information, all these things. And one of the things that came up towards the end of the last meeting was the fact, maybe if we did tie the pharmacy license to these working conditions. So therefore, if working conditions were found to be purposely inadequate, or they weren't, or they were skirting the rules, that this would actually have a full impact on the revocation of that pharmacist license. And so those are just a number of my thoughts, and kind of going into the second and third, because I don't think I'll speak on all of them individually. But in the end, kind of, especially after this conversation, this is going to be a legislative matter. There's no avenue that I'm aware of that the board specifically can take to fix this without a legislative remedy. And so I just want to make sure that that's put on everyone's radar, that no matter what vote we have here, this is going to have to be done through the legislature if we're going to fix this waiver situation. And so while I think a recommendation, just because we ask for a statutory change, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll automatically happen, doesn't mean there's automatically a co-sponsor that comes with it. There's going to have to be someone in the legislature who will take this on and build a nuanced bill with the guardrails we're talking about. So those are my kind of overarching thoughts.
Thank you, Trevor. Great comments. Great comments, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'm going to open up for public comment here if the members have any other comments. Just a reminder to the public, it's just a question. I'm sure there's quite a few public commenters ready to comment on this topic. Just a reminder that this is about the board. Does the board believe permanent changes to the board's current remote processing provisions are appropriate? You are more than welcome to provide global public comment regarding remote processing, but just we can remind you to respectfully request you don't repeat your comments and just offer new comments as we move on through the next few questions.
And this is the moderator, and we've opened up the Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen. After clicking that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Anyone may also raise their hand to make a public comment by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning, and we are asking that speakers do not request to speak twice. Our first request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Jassy Grewal. And Jassy, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes. You're unmuted.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Jassy Grewal here on behalf of UFCW Western States Council. UFCW is strongly opposed to the Board of Pharmacy seeking permanent statute changes regarding remote processing. A temporary waiver was issued during a pandemic, an emergency and unique circumstance. If another emergency presents itself, the board can implement another waiver like it did in this instance. Additional UFCW concerns include, first, chain community pharmacies should not be able to conduct remote processing, given that pharmacies are not owned by licensed professionals and the unique healthcare relationship of a corporation telling licensed professionals to meet profit-driven metrics. Additionally, the workforce study conducted by this board shows how overworked and overburdened current pharmacy staff are, making pharmacists work after hours will not aid in reducing this workload burden. And how is this board going to be able to enforce all pharmacy and labor laws that are being complied with remotely at individuals' homes, especially if pharmacists are out of the state? Second, this places additional and significant liability on the PIC. A PIC cannot watch and supervise a pharmacist working remotely, and the licensure implications are too severe if a mistake is made remotely. Furthermore, we are significantly concerned with potential HIPAA issues remote processing poses and the lack of security and data protections on computers used at individuals' homes. The board has had numerous conversations relating to reducing the impacts of the opioid pandemic, and this proposal would allow for the remote processing of controlled substances, which seems counter to the work of the board. Lastly, UFCW would like to propose the following amendments to this proposal: excluding chain pharmacies from remote processing, limiting remote processing only to business hours, giving pharmacists the authority to expressly refuse remote processing responsibilities, prohibiting pharmacy technicians and unlicensed pharmacy staff from remote processing, and requiring remote processing pharmacies and licensees to register with the Board of Pharmacy for enforcement purposes. We respectfully request that the board continue discussions on remote processing. It is premature to move forward with a permanent statutory change. Thank you for allowing me to make public comment today.
Thank you for the comment, Jazzy.
And our next request for comment comes from John Gray. John, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning. This is John Gray. I'm a registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this question within this topic. So just without providing a position on the proposed changes to BPC, Business and Professions Code 4071.1, we do want to commend the licensing committee and the board for continuing to discuss the very important issue of pharmacist and pharmacy technician remote work and bringing forward a proposal to expressly allow for pharmacist remote work in some practice settings. We also want to express our opinion that the draft statutory language doesn't go as far as we would like in authorizing remote work for pharmacy personnel. After 3 years of pharmacist, pharmacy technician, and pharmacy intern remote work being allowed in all practice settings, we believe that there is ample evidence to indicate that this practice is safe, provides needed flexibility for California pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, and is a work situation that a cohort of employees do want. With that, I'll leave the rest of my comments for questions 2 and 3. So thank you for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx under the name Tina. Tina, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. You're unmuted.
Tina, and I work as a full-time remote pharmacist for a mail order pharmacy. So I joined the team in SoCal while I live 6 hours away. If there is a change in the work from home waiver law, I, along with numerous other colleagues, will stand to unfortunately lose our jobs. So remote pharmacy job, this mail order pharmacy, the specialty pharmacy has provided us an inclusive and equitable setting for pharmacists who have limitations. It could be a health condition, a disability, taking care of a disabled family member or a special needs child, or simply just trying to raise a family while maintaining work-life balance and mental health. For these pharmacists, it should not be a choice between health or being there for family versus not working at all and being remote from the workplace. So when I started my job 2 years ago, we were informed that for the 16 pharmacy open positions, close to 400 pharmacists had applied. So obviously there is an interest, there is a demand, and there's a need for the work from home jobs in our profession. There's a lot of talk about companies and corporates being more inclusive and non-discriminatory to age, disabilities, or special accommodations. It would be great to see the profession of pharmacy itself, starting from the Board of Pharmacy, being more inclusive and providing an alternative for the pharmacists who cannot be a part of the very taxing retail or hospital job scene. My current work from home position has given me more flexibility. It has saved time, wasted, on commuting while work. I can take my scheduled breaks and lunches. We are discussing overworked, overburdened pharmacists. These are very important criteria, for mental health and reducing stress levels at jobs, and for pharmacists who need a better work-life balance. It makes me a better pharmacist. It makes me more efficient and productive. I just love my job, and I am able to provide the highest level of patient care in a very focused environment, one task at a time. I have VPN, password protection, and security features in place, only using the computer for all tasks without any paper, pen involved. in a separate dedicated room with proper annual trainings and monitoring from my employer, where protecting the patient privacy is a priority. I have access to various online clinical resources and also team support from other pharmacists, which I found missing, when you work as a retail pharmacist in reaching clinically sound decisions. I would not be performing my job any different if I were in office than doing it from home. In California, we have the strongest tech at our disposal to ensure the safety, security, integrity of the computer systems. We need to ensure to use these advances to continue to evolve, rather than stop the remote setting altogether and miss the chance of broadening the work from home setting, which makes quality healthcare accessible. Pharmacy would grow, be more inclusive, increase outreach and equitable as a profession, both for the patients and pharmacists.
And time has expired. The next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Neil Mehta. Neil, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes.
Today. My name is Neil and I've been a pharmacist for about 20 years. I strongly feel that remote processing in specialty pharmacy is a safe and effective option that meets the needs of both the patient and the pharmacist. 2 years ago, I had no idea that this was even possible. And now I'm 100% convinced that this system works. And I'm passionate to share my experience. On a personal level, working remotely has been a lifesaver due to some health issues. But I'd like to begin by saying that not all pharmacy is the same and cannot be generalized under one umbrella when considering to allow remote processing. Many specialty and mail order pharmacies are already closed door, and patient care is provided via phone and video services, as the locations are not open to the general public. And next, I would like to focus on patient safety. I'm convinced that our current technology already provides the safeguards to protect patient privacy. It was said, but once again, computers are connected through the internet through a hardwired, not Wi-Fi connection using a VPN. The pharmacists cannot simply take their computer to a coffee shop or any other public place and use an unsecured network. All desktop computers are issued by the company and continuously monitored, and no software changes can be made. The use of personal devices, including personal phones, are prohibited. All calls are made using encrypted software provided by the company and also recorded and reviewed by supervisors. With technology, all records are handled electronically, whether it's a new verbal prescription, notes regarding a patient's health condition, or any other matter pertaining to the therapy. Everything is recorded electronically on our computer, and this eliminates the need for handwritten notes that would otherwise be needed to be disposed of in a confidential manner. Since specialty drugs often carry serious adverse effects, a more detailed clinical review is needed. Working remotely from a home office eliminates distractions, allowing the pharmacist to focus deeper on the patient's therapy and provide the time needed that the patient requires to understand their therapy. Remote processing has already been executed with great success, and I believe at least 45 states are currently allowing pharmacists to work remotely. I believe that this will be an enhancement to patient safety and also increase accessibility to a pharmacist. So I say, let's not turn back the clock, but let's embrace this technology. I invite the board to really look into the details of how remote processing is actually being carried out in a compliant manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment. I'm sorry for the interruption. Moderator, could you please promote Jose to the panelists?
Certainly. Thank you.
Go ahead and continue on.
And our next request for comment is from someone logged into WebEx as Jean Howard. Jean, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and then you'll have 3 minutes. You're unmuted.
Howard, I'm not sure if this is applicable because I don't know if the Board of Pharmacy is doing remote processing for their activities as well, or if they're working in the office. But one of the things that I worry about is that when I try to get correspondence on, the status of applications, whether it's pharmacists or facilities, licensing, anything, I don't seem to get any replies. And I don't know if there's a backlog, I know you guys had some flooding issues in Sacramento. So, can you provide any sort of update on if you guys are still catching up on things because of COVID, or if you feel like you are back into the normal operations as far as being able to process all your applications?
President O, this is Eileen Smiley. I think that comment is well outside of what we're discussing about remote processing by pharmacy personnel. And I would direct the commenter to contact either Ann or somebody at the Board of Pharmacy about questions with respect to applications after the meeting.
Thank you, Eileen. Appreciate it, and appreciate the comments and apologies. We'll do. Thank you, Eileen.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Jennifer Snyder. Jennifer, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 3 minutes. You're unmuted.
Hi, this is Jennifer Snyder, commenting today on behalf of the California Retailers Association and the National Association of Chain Drug Stores. No, we've submitted a letter and have commented previously on this important issue of remote processing. We've indicated previously that CRA and NACDS are supportive of the board taking action to ensure remote processing continue for all types of pharmacy settings, including community retail pharmacy. We strongly believe the inability for retail pharmacies to utilize remote processing for non-dispensing functions will result in significant job loss and increased pressure on the community pharmacy workforce. As we've noted in previous testimony, remote processing has been practiced in California prior to the pandemic, and an overwhelming amount of states in the US allow remote pharmacist work, and many allow remote pharmacy technician work as well. Our pharmacies have systems and processes in place to safeguard patient privacy, supervise remote work, and supervise remote work effectively. Also, we've talked about that there's many associated benefits that have been demonstrated with the allowance for remote work, greater flexibility for pharmacists who can balance work and home life more easily, less distractions that allow greater focus on work, and reduced medication errors. We strongly believe without the ability to offer these remote processing options for our employees, pharmacies will lose a considerable amount of pharmacists to other jobs that provide these opportunities, and it will have a significant impact on patient access to pharmacy services. So for this reason, we urge the board to take the necessary steps to ensure that remote work can continue for all pharmacy settings, including community pharmacy, outpatient pharmacy, which comprises such a significant percentage of California's pharmacy sector. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a few comments on behalf of the retailers and the National Association of Chain Drug Stores. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Jennifer.
And our next request for comment is from someone logged into WebEx as Annie Kim. Annie, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes. You're unmuted.
Hello, my name is Annie Kim, and I am a California licensed pharmacist that services specialty patients. I wanted to let you know that I am a working mom to 2 young kids and a very old dog. I am scared today and very worried. My life, my future, my career, just like many others, are based on the outcome of today's vote. I went into pharmacy because of my passion to help others and because I lost 2 fathers to cancer, both my biological dad and my stepfather. I was helpless, and I could not assist my mom with their regimen. I found my calling in pharmacy. When the opportunity presented itself for me to be able to work from home and still help patients, I went after it without a doubt and even took a huge pay cut. Speaking from my own personal experience, I know what it is like to feel clueless about medications. Because I work from home, I am able to take my time with each patient and thoroughly and securely answer all of their questions, without the distraction of being surrounded by others in a pharmacy. How I would have been so grateful for this many years ago when my own family was going through a tragic disease. Specialty medications really do require more time for counseling because of their complexity. I mentioned earlier that I am a mom, and therefore my family comes first. I'm only 10 minutes away from my kids, and in an emergency, sometimes that can mean being able to wipe away their tears or tend to an injury much more quickly than if I were stuck in traffic for an hour. I'm sure many of you can relate and wish that you can be there for someone you care about as quickly as possible in an emergency. If pharmacists are required to return to work in person, many of us would lose our jobs. Some of us had taken jobs remotely that are very far from the pharmacy. Others have relocated or sold their cars. If this waiver is not made permanent, it would disrupt many lives, families, and the job market. If it is safe enough to check a chart as a remote pharmacist doing prior authorizations or working on formularies, it is definitely safe enough for a specialty clinical pharmacist to do our job and take care of our patients thoroughly and securely. The fate of thousands of pharmacists will be determined today. Not only will our lives be affected, but those of our patients as well. Please vote to allow pharmacists to work from home so that we can bring this to the legislature. My final thought is technology has allowed us to progress in the field of pharmacy. Let us embrace it and move forward and not backwards. I understand there are concerns, but those can be addressed along the way to help better the field of pharmacy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comments.
And then our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Enos Anton. Enos, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. And you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to comment. My name is Ines Anton. I'm a California licensed pharmacist for 10 years. I worked with CVS Retail, and then I joined CVS Specialty Front End on January 2021 after my uncle got diagnosed of bladder cancer and felt helpless about medications. So I got hired and trained actually remotely with some on-site, but the rest was online training. I became proficient in my job without any issues, and I performed the essential duties of pharmacist every day while working remotely without any rising concerns. Because if you know, like specialty pharmacy front end, it's all completed work digitally, and with our CVS Secure system that's double password protected and in compliance with HIPAA regulation, we had no instance of breaching privacy for the last 3 years. In fact, working remotely improved patient quality of care, and it promoted public health and safety because it improved productivity. As mentioned earlier by other colleagues, it's less distraction and less interruptions from staff meetings and phone calls. So I'm actually able to provide more engaged patient care and consultation while still utilizing all the online resources in my workstation. And it improved communication, not only among team members via more effective, direct, and concise ways of communication rather than in-person conversations, but as said earlier, meetings are conducted in more focused and efficient way, and we are able to communicate just as effectively with providers and nurses through phone calls, faxes, and emails. We also have 24/7 phone number for patients and caregivers to call back and answer all their questions and concerns. It also added some health benefits to staff, which means also better care of our patients with less in-person contact and continued infection control. I personally had a surgery last year, and I took 2 weeks off work instead of 6 weeks. And without getting any state disability benefit, I was able to recover at home while working and still taking care of my patients. I know it was a concern about errors as well, medication errors, but I believe custom and more comfortable work environment will add to less medication errors and make sure we deliver medications to patients in a timely manner. It also added to flexibility to accommodate for last-minute shift changes and cover for emergencies. In addition to public health benefits, and especially with the gas prices going up and lower to.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Anthony Lay. Anthony, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. And you're unmuted. But we're not hearing your voice.
Okay, perfect.
Well, there you go.
Okay, perfect. Hi, President and the pharmacy board panel and the participants. So I don't have a question. I just want to provide my thoughts also. I know a lot has been mentioned already, but let me just give you a little brief info about myself. My name is Anthony Lee. I've been a pharmacist for quite some time with California. I've been a California pharmacist for close to 2 decades. And I've seen my role personally change quite a bit over the course of my career. And I know that I've been seeing from being a traditional pharmacist to being actually actual healthcare professional. So I just want to add some extra points to it and my personal experience with what I've gone through with remote work. When the pandemic hit, it provided me an opportunity to take the remote work. I work as a remote pharmacist for about a year already, and I noticed that we've got new systems with cutting edge computer systems that identifies preventing and resolving drug related problems. And I know that the most important thing for patient, and this is all about safety for the patient's data. And the computer system's constantly upgraded, so that's why I don't think this should be a concern as long as the security is there. I mean, there always be risk for data breach, not just for pharmacy, but for banks, cell phones, companies, even credit card companies. These are like sensitive data, and yet they're still working to provide service. So if there's still security process in place, I think it should not prevent us from providing services to patients and clients. And the company that I work for is continually providing confidentiality agreements, training on a regular basis, processes, policies, and all this stuff. We also have like computer and call monitoring systems to protect data stored on computers and ensure the devices are working correctly. Internet, we talk about that already. We don't use Wi-Fi. It's very, very risky, and that's why we are hardwired firewall and things like that. And I'm provided with a actual computer device and computer system and things like that to perform my duty. Personal experience, actually, I have very bad allergies, and because of remote work, it allowed me to actually work from home, even though I have severe allergies that I don't have to call off or whatnot. And then during the early pandemics, I was a PIC for a very high volume retail pharmacy. Actually, my wife came down with the COVID, and I was extremely worried and stressed out, not just for my family, but for my colleague in my pharmacies. My constant thoughts of getting like COVID and giving to my colleagues is not something that I could live with. So I followed the COVID protocols really strictly, and luckily, and that includes quarantine. And luckily, I was able to continue to work without spreading the COVID. The pandemic has really taught me that pharmacy role actually can be performed and performed well.
10 seconds.
So in conclusion, I just believe work from home could be available post-pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
And our next request for comment comes from Mark Johnson. Mark, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mark Johnston from CVS Health. At least 45 states allow pharmacists to work remotely. As we have heard from public testimony today and at the committee, the California Board of Pharmacy has allowed pharmacists to work remotely for decades prior to the pandemic, regardless of the board staff's new position. Restricting an industry standard across America and within California to just hospital pharmacy and other practices that serve facilities ignores remote work for community pharmacy that has been safely performed with little to no regulation across the nation and in California, especially during the state of emergency due to the pandemic. Remember, community pharmacy in California is a licensure category that includes many practice settings besides the corner drugstore. Additionally, the proposal neglects to address the cognitive practice of pharmacy. The waiver focuses on a pharmacist being electronically connected to a pharmacy, but pharmacists practice in a wide variety of practice settings that are not licensed pharmacies. For example, the committee motion would not allow common practices such as pharmacists working in physician's office and advanced practice pharmacists working independently. The motion would not allow me to counsel my mother at the kitchen table on her new RX items, take calls from my friends concerning OTC recommendations for their colds, or volunteer at brown bag events at senior centers. Considering the board staff's bright line regulatory position, is the board going to issue enforcement discretion concerning these cognitive services, or is the board effectively ending common practice as it has been in place since the existence of the profession of pharmacy? This motion is incomplete at best. Back to remote pharmacies that are electronically connected to a pharmacy. Remote work removes work from within the pharmacy, balancing workload and improving working conditions. Studies prove that errors are reduced as distractions are reduced, and there are certainly less distractions when working in a home office as compared to a pharmacy. Plus, every pharmacist who works at home is not present in the pharmacy where diversion of controlled substances may occur. Therefore, remote work increases public safety. Studies indicate that pharmacy schools will graduate 25 to 30% less graduates in 2023. A remote pharmacist position is a desirable community pharmacy position that can address the upcoming shortages of pharmacists. Remote work creates jobs for pharmacists who may otherwise be unable to be employed, such as single parents or pharmacists with disabilities.
10 seconds.
Arguably, it is the board's responsibility to create solutions to this upcoming public safety event, and remote work should be part of the solution.
Thank you for the comment, Mark.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Eileen Masigla. Eileen, I'm going to send you a request. To unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. You're unmuted. We're not hearing your voice yet.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Okay, I was waiting for that you're unmuted cue. Okay, my name is Eileen. I'm also a specialty pharmacist. My assignment does not have a dispensing role, and I can say that we have been able to continue our mission and vision to protect, promote, and even augment the health and safety of Californians by evidence of multiple factors, including but not limited to reduced medication errors. Our upper management has provided that there has been a great reduction in medication errors. Another one would be improved attendance. My superior has shared that both tardiness and sick calls have decreased dramatically since we had been assigned to work from home. This has maintained and even enhanced our obligation to service the public and has increased our own productivity and longevity. And to further, eliminated drive time has left us with more energy to work extra, i.e. overtime, when mandated by upper management. We have been able to continue to perform infection control. This winter has run rampant with multiple germs, and I can say that I have not fallen sick since before the pandemic. I believe that has resulted from working from home. If I could share an example, we did have an on-site colleague who contracted COVID about a month ago. He needed a week to recover, but luckily no one else was there. No other pharmacists, no other technicians fell sick as we were not near, and patient care was only slightly compromised, minus one pharmacist versus hundreds of pharmacists and technicians. With CVS, we have been able to expand. We've been able to expand our personnel beyond the confines of our previous call center. This has given more visibility and access for our clients in need with more pharmacist availability. For us, if we were required to return on site, there would not be enough space to accommodate. We're about 30 desks short. Our workspace was already tight prior to expansion. Sharing cubicles would promote an unhygienic environment and even potentiate miscommunication, which could lead to possible medication error by noise pollution. And then also, per an on-site colleague, the internet speed, it is faster since most of it has left promoting further productivity. Continued working remote processing would promote continued safety from potential dangerous commutes. Driving anywhere, especially in California, is particularly dangerous. CHP, our California Highway Patrol stats, does show that the majority of injury accidents do occur between the hours of 7 to 10 a.m. and then 3 to 6 p.m. And we're talking thousands versus hundreds. Those are the prime commuting hours for the services that we provide. And if there is the option to keep pharmacy personnel safe to maximize patient access and care, I think it would be a wise decision to elect to make that decision. In closure, if I may share that I really enjoy what I do. I've been a pharmacist for about 21 years now.
10 seconds.
and I've been able to aid the public in so many ways in this specific setting. Being in office would not provide any additional benefit to our job functions. I'd like to continue.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged into WebEx as Lori Walmsley. Lori, I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, board members. Lori Walmsley on behalf of Walgreens. I'd like to echo the comments of many of the other commenters. As an organization, we are in full support of the board expanding your permanent use of remote work for all practice settings. There have been a number of assumptions made on how community pharmacies can leverage remote work. I believe Mark Johnston mentioned it earlier, but we believe that remote work is an opportunity for us to expand opportunities for many of our pharmacists to help to support our local community stores, as well as provide other employment opportunities to help to support patients in a different way, especially for those individuals that may have limitations based on where they live or based on their health issues. So strongly support any efforts by the board to make these actions permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments, Lori.
And I do not see any other requests for public comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. It is 12:12, so we'll, sorry for the little awkward pause, but we have a lot more still to go. So we're just going to take a lunch break and we'll come back at 1 o'clock. Everyone, we'll see you back at 1 o'clock. Enjoy your lunch and take a little breather, and we'll be back on the next question. See you in 45 minutes at 1.